The air smelled of egusi soup and fried yam. Laughter filled the small dining room in Ibadan as uncles, aunties, cousins, and grandparents crowded around the long table. Plates clattered, voices overlapped. The family had gathered to remember Morenike's father, gone 5 years now, and to check on how things were going. Tunde, her uncle, sat at the head of the table, his wide frame taking up space, his voice louder than the rest. People nodded when he spoke. Even her mother, Said, barely said a word unless he asked her something. 12-year-old Morenike sat beside her mother, quietly eating. She watched the grown-ups argue about money, complain about the cost of fuel, and joke about how women can't manage money properly. Then, Tunde turned to her mother and said loudly, "If only you had a better head on your shoulders, Said, I wouldn't still be feeding your child." Something tightened in Morenike's chest. Her hand gripped the spoon. She looked at her mother, who lowered her eyes, saying nothing. Then Morenike spoke. "We can start a small akara business," she said, her voice soft but clear. "Mummy's akara is the best in our street. I can help after school." The room went quiet. Someone laughed awkwardly. One of her aunties muttered, "Child talking when elders are speaking." Tunde dropped his spoon. "What did you say?" he asked slowly, eyes fixed on her. Morenike looked up. "I said Mummy can fry akara to sell. I can help her. That way she won't slap." His hand moved fast. The sound rang louder than all the laughter from before. Her head turned with the force. She tasted blood. Her cheek stung. "You want to teach your mother how to run her life?" Tunde shouted. "Are you the man of this house now?" Nobody spoke. The sound of chewing stopped. A fork clinked to the floor. Her mother opened her mouth, then closed it again. Tunde went back to eating, like nothing happened. Morenike sat still. Her eyes burned, but she didn't cry. No one looked at her. Even her cousins stared at their plates. Her mother kept her eyes on her food. Only Morenike could hear her own heartbeat. In that silence, something shifted inside her. The pain on her face faded, but another kind of fire started in her chest. She would remember this slap. She would remember the silence, and she would never ever forget who she needed to become. After her father died in a car accident, Morenike's life changed completely. She was just 7 years old when her mother, Sadie, packed their few clothes and moved them into her late husband's family house in the Oke-Ado area of Ibadan. It was a large compound with too many people and not enough space. At the center of it all was Uncle Tunde, her father's older brother. Tunde didn't smile much. He believed children should be seen, not heard. He believed women should cook, clean, and stay silent. He believed that helping Said and Morenike made him the family's savior, and he reminded them of that every day. "Don't forget who is feeding you," he would say, slamming his shoes on the table after work. "If not for me, you two would be on the street." Said never argued. She would nod, clean his shoes, and go back to the kitchen. Morenike, on the other hand, felt something heavy inside her chest every time he spoke. She didn't understand everything, but she knew this wasn't right. She remembered one evening, when she was 9, she brought home a small book from school, a simple storybook about a girl who became a lawyer and fought for women's rights. Morenike read it 3 times in 1 week. On the 4th day, Tunde caught her reading in the parlor. "What's this rubbish?" he said, snatching the book. "It's just a story," she said quietly. He flipped through the pages and frowned. "So now you want to be arguing with men in court? This is why your mother is like this. Useless." Then he tore the book in 2 and threw it into the dustbin. Morenike watched the pages fall like broken wings. Her hands were shaking, but she said nothing. That night, her mother sat beside her in bed and whispered, "Please, just listen to him. Don't talk too much. Do your schoolwork and stay quiet, for peace." Morenike nodded, but her heart didn't agree. At school, Morenike shone like a light. Her teachers always praised her essays and speeches. She had a sharp mind and a strong voice. Her best friend, Halima, once said, "You speak like someone who can change the world." In JSS 3, Morenike helped Halima prepare for an inter-school debate. Halima was chosen to represent their school because of the way Morenike trained her. The day of the finals came, and the school gave Morenike a permission slip to attend. She was so happy. When she brought the slip home, Said held it and said nothing for a long time. Then quietly, she said, "No, don't show it to Tunde. Just say you can't go." "But why?" Morenike asked. Said looked at her daughter and smiled sadly. "He'll think it's useless. He'll say you're wasting time, and he may stop you from attending school at all." Morenike folded the slip slowly and placed it back in her bag. She didn't go to the debate. Instead, she sat on her bed that day and listened to the rain hit the zinc roof. Her eyes stayed open for hours, but her heart felt far away. At home, she cooked, cleaned, and swept every day. Tunde would come home and shout if the floor wasn't shining. He would insult Sadie in front of visitors, calling her weak and useless. He would tell people, "She's still here because no other man wants her." Sadie never answered. She just served him food and smiled politely. But every time he insulted her mother, something inside Morenike grew harder. She began to write at night when everyone was asleep. On the back of her old school notes, she wrote stories about courtrooms and strong women who spoke the truth and won. She hid them under her mattress. Sometimes, she stared at herself in the mirror and said out loud, "One day, I will be free. One day, I will speak, and no one will stop me." But in that house, silence ruled everything. And in that silence, both Morenike and her mother were slowly choking, one by fear, the other by fire. Morenike was 17 now, tall, quiet, sharp. She had learned to carry herself with calm strength. At school, she was known as the girl who never spoke unless it mattered, and when she did, people listened. She had always dreamed of becoming a lawyer. It stayed with her, deep in her heart, like a seed waiting for rain. One day, her literature teacher, Mrs. Follerin, had pulled her aside after class. "You applied for the Commonwealth Scholarship, right?" she asked with a smile. Morenike blinked. "Yes, I did." Mrs. Follerin looked surprised. "Oh, I thought you knew. You got it. Full scholarship. Ghana. Law. We're proud of you." Morenike's heart stopped. "I got it?" Mrs. Follerin nodded. "Of course. They sent out the letters weeks ago. Didn't your guardian tell you?" Morenike walked home in silence that day, her mind spinning. Her hands were shaking, but her face remained calm. At the compound gate, she greeted the neighbors. Inside, she went straight to her room. She waited until the house was quiet that night. Then she searched. Under the bed, in the wardrobe, behind the cupboard. Finally, she found it, between the pages of an old newspaper in Tunde's room. The letter, sealed and untouched. Her name was printed clearly. "Dear Miss Morenike Adebayo, we are pleased to inform you." Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't cry. She folded the letter and went to her mother's room. Sade was lying on the mat, already half asleep. "Mummy," Morenike said softly, "did you know I got a scholarship?" Sade sat up slowly. Her face went pale. "Did you know?" Morenike asked again. Sade didn't speak for a few seconds. Then she nodded, eyes full of shame. "I saw the envelope," she whispered. "Your uncle brought it in. He looked at it and laughed. I asked him. I begged him to give it to you, but he said no. He said you're not going anywhere." Morenike felt her chest tighten. "And you just agreed?" "I was afraid," Sade said, voice trembling. "I didn't want him to throw you out. I didn't know what to do. I'm sorry, Morenike. I didn't know how to protect you." Morenike stood there, frozen. The silence was loud. The next morning, she waited until Tunde came home from the mosque. He removed his cap, placed his sandals by the door, and walked in like a king. She was waiting in the parlor with the letter in her hand. "You hid my scholarship letter," she said. Tunde raised his brow. "So? You told everyone I failed." He chuckled. "Because you did. You failed to respect this house. You want to run away and become some foreign lawyer. You want to leave your mother here. You lied. I protected this family," he snapped. "You are still under my roof. I feed you. You don't make decisions here." Morenike stared at him, the letter shaking in her hand. "I will leave this house one day, and you will regret everything." Tunde only laughed louder. "You think paper and dreams will save you? You're just a girl." Morenike walked away without another word. That night, she sat in bed with the letter pressed to her chest. Her mother sat beside her, silent. "You could have stood up for me," Morenike said quietly. Sade looked down. "I wasn't strong enough." Morenike didn't reply, but inside her, something broke, and something else was born. Morenike stopped going to school. At first, she told her mother she had a headache. The next day, she said nothing at all. By the third day, she didn't bother pretending. She just stayed in her room, staring at the ceiling, her school bag untouched by the door. Her mother didn't push. She simply watched her daughter slowly disappear into herself. Halima came by once, knocking on the gate. "Morenike, are you okay?" she asked through the iron bars. "I'm fine," Morenike replied without opening the gate. "You missed the mock exam." I said I'm fine. Halima stood there for a moment, then left. Morenike went back inside and sat on the floor of her room. The heat of the day pressed against the walls. Everything felt heavy. She took her government textbook and went to the old, unused classroom at the back of the compound, where her cousins used to take extra lessons. It was dusty now, broken chairs, cobwebs, silence. She sat on the cold cement floor and opened the textbook. Then she began tearing the pages, slowly, one by one. The sound was soft, but inside her chest, everything was loud. Tears rolled down her face, but she didn't stop. Later that night, when everyone was asleep, she took her school uniform, the brown skirt and cream shirt she had worn for years, and threw it into the small cooking stove behind the house. She lit the match. The cloth caught fire fast. Orange flames danced. She watched it burn without blinking. In that moment, something felt free, but also broken. A few days later, while cleaning the cupboard in her mother's room, she found an old Bible. She opened it without thinking, and a small photo slipped out. It was her father, smiling in a suit. On the back of the photo, written in neat blue ink, were 4 words: "The truth is light." She stared at it for a long time. Then she took it to her room and placed it under her pillow. That night, she started writing. On the back of old notebooks, exam sheets, and used envelopes, she wrote letters to herself. "Ladies and gentlemen of the court," she began, "we are here today, not for revenge, but for truth. This girl, this child, has suffered quietly for years." Every night, she wrote more. Courtroom scenes, speeches, confessions. She imagined standing in front of a judge, her voice clear, telling her story. In her writings, Tunda was finally held responsible. Her mother finally spoke up. And Morenike finally became who she was meant to be. By day, she barely spoke. She didn't eat much. She stayed away from everyone. Her body felt weak, but her mind wouldn't rest. She didn't trust anyone now, not even her mother. But in her writing, she found something she hadn't felt in a long time: hope. She didn't know how, she didn't know when, but she would get out. And when she did, the world would hear her voice. One quiet afternoon, Morenike sat alone in the empty school library. Most students had gone home, but she had nowhere else to go. She sat by the window, writing one of her courtroom letters in the back of an old notebook. She didn't notice the woman standing nearby until a gentle voice spoke. "You wrote this?" Morenike looked up, startled. It was Mrs. Adebayo, the new part-time teacher. She had silver hair tied neatly in a scarf, and glasses that made her eyes look kind but sharp. Morenike nodded slowly. Mrs. Adebayo smiled. "I used to be a lawyer. I taught law for 20 years before I retired. May I sit?" Morenike nodded again. The older woman sat down across from her and began reading the page quietly. After a while, she looked up. "Your pen is your sword, Morenike. Use it well." Those words stayed with her. The next day, Mrs. Adebayo brought Morenike a new notebook. "Write in this, and if you're serious about studying law, let me help you." Morenike hesitated. "I already tried. I got a scholarship, but it was stolen from me." Mrs. Adebayo raised her brow. "Tell me everything." So Morenike told her. She explained how her uncle took the letter, how her mother stayed silent, how her dream was buried without her consent. Mrs. Adebayo listened without interrupting. Then she said firmly, "We'll apply again, but this time we'll do it right." They worked quietly, in secret. They used Mrs. Adebayo's home address. They filled out forms, printed documents, even recorded a short video essay. One day, while trying to retrieve Morenike's birth certificate from the local registry, they discovered something strange. Her passport had been altered. Someone had changed her name slightly, switched 2 letters, and added incorrect information about her education. Mrs. Adebayo narrowed her eyes. "Whoever did this wanted to make sure you'd never be able to travel." They went back to the school. The principal was surprised to see them. When they asked to see Morenike's transcript, another shock came. The printed version in the file was different from what had been sent earlier. Lower grades, a forged school stamp. Morenike's chest felt tight. "He did this too." Mrs. Adebayo sighed deeply. "Your uncle has broken more than just trust. This is fraud." Morenike stared at the fake transcript in her hand. For the first time, she didn't feel powerless. She felt angry, but focused. "What do we do now?" she asked. Mrs. Adebayo looked at her carefully. "We gather proof, we follow the law, and we make sure everyone hears the truth." Morenike nodded. A plan began to form. She would not hide anymore. She was ready. The hearing was set for a Thursday morning at the local council hall. Morenike wore a plain white shirt and long skirt. She tied her hair back neatly. Her hands were cold, but her face was calm. Mrs. Adebayo stood beside her like a quiet shield. News had spread quickly. Some neighbors whispered, "She's bold, this girl." Others frowned. She's bringing shame, fighting her own blood. Tunde arrived late, wearing his usual agbada, head held high. He laughed loudly, shaking hands with people. "It's just a misunderstanding," he said. Inside the hall, the council officers sat in a row. There were school officials, local leaders, and a representative from the Ministry of Education. Morenike stepped forward first. She read clearly from her paper. "I applied for a scholarship. I was accepted, but the letter was taken from me. My school records were changed. My passport was altered. I was lied to. I was silenced." She paused. "I am here today to speak, to tell the truth. I have proof." She handed over copies of her real results, the acceptance letter, and a sworn affidavit. Then it was Tunde's turn. He scoffed. "She's a child. She's being used. This woman," he pointed at Mrs. Adebayo, "is filling her head with nonsense. I did what was best. She was not ready." A few murmurs ran through the crowd. Then Said was called to speak. She walked slowly to the front, her wrapper tied tightly around her waist. Her voice shook as she held the microphone. "I watched my daughter suffer," she said. "I stayed quiet. I thought silence would protect her, but I was wrong. I failed my daughter." Tears rolled down her cheeks. "She got that scholarship. I saw the letter, but I didn't fight for her. I let fear control me." Tunde stood up angrily. "This is madness. After all I've done for you people." "Sit down," one of the councilmen said, but Tunde didn't stop. "This girl thinks she's better than everyone. She was never grateful. She's not even my daughter." "Exactly," Morenike said quietly, "and you had no right to ruin my future." The room went quiet. The head officer looked through the evidence. After a short break, the decision was read out. Tunde Adebayo is hereby removed as legal guardian to Miss Morenike Adebayo. He is fined for document falsification and obstruction of educational rights. His actions have caused emotional harm and violated her freedom. Morenike closed her eyes. The weight began to lift. Outside, some people avoided her. Others nodded with respect. Mrs. Adebayo placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You did well." Morenike didn't smile, but her eyes were steady. Justice had begun. The rainy season had just begun in Ibadan. The roads were muddy, the sky often grey. Morenike walked through the streets with her slippers splashing quietly in small puddles. For the first time, the city felt smaller, like she had outgrown it. At the junction near her house, the postman waved her down. "Letter for you," he said, handing her a brown envelope with a red stamp from Ghana. Her heart began to race. She walked home slowly, holding the envelope close. Inside her room, she opened it with trembling fingers. It was from the university in Accra. Her eyes moved quickly over the words. "We are pleased to offer you a full scholarship for the undergraduate law program." She gasped, but there was more. Tucked inside was a small handwritten note on neat cream paper. "Dear Morenike, I read your writing, the courtroom piece titled, 'The Girl Who Was Not Allowed to Speak.' It screamed of truth. It moved me. I believe you have a rare voice. I have shared it with our student law journal. They want to publish it in the next issue. Welcome to the future. Dean Kojo, Mensa." Morenike sat back on her bed, holding the note to her chest. She stayed there for a long time, letting the moment soak in. Then she went to find her mother. Said was outside, peeling beans by the kitchen. Morenike handed her the letter. "Read it." Said wiped her hands and looked at the page. As she read, her mouth trembled. Tears filled her eyes. She held the paper tightly, as if afraid it would disappear. She looked up at her daughter, voice shaking. "I am proud of you." Morenike nodded. "I know." Said pulled her close and held her tight, something she hadn't done in years. The next morning, Morenike began packing. She folded her few clothes neatly. She packed her notebook, her pen, and her scholarship letter. Then she reached under her pillow and pulled out the old photo of her father. She looked at his face one more time. She placed it gently between the pages of her journal. As she zipped her bag, the sun peeked through the clouds. She stood in the doorway of her room looking back just once. Then she stepped forward. She was ready. The evening breeze in Accra was soft and warm. Birds flew low across the orange sky as Morenike sat under a tall tree near the campus library. The leaves above her rustled gently. Her journal lay open on her lap. She took her pen and began to write slowly, carefully. "You slapped me, Uncle Tunde, but you also woke me up. That day, you thought you were silencing me, but you pushed me toward my voice. You made me promise myself I would never be quiet again." She paused and smiled slightly, then turned the page and continued. "Now, I speak for myself, and one day I will speak for others who cannot." A voice called from across the lawn. "Morenike, dinner?" 3 students stood waving at her. She raised a hand in reply. "I'm coming!" she called back, her voice clear and free. She closed her journal, slid it into her bag, and stood. Before leaving, she took out a small brown envelope and slid her newly printed article inside. On the front, she wrote the address in careful handwriting. 2. Saad Adebayo, number 6 Irefin Street, Ibadan. She dropped it in the campus postbox the next morning. Back in Ibadan, Sade was sweeping the small sitting room when the envelope arrived. She opened it slowly, carefully. Inside was the article, "The Girl Who Was Not Allowed to Speak." She sat down and read every word. When she finished, she looked up at the wall. A photo of her late husband hung there, faded but still strong. She wiped her eyes and reached into the drawer. She found an old picture frame, cleaned the glass, and placed the article inside. She stood back and looked at it. Her daughter's name was there in bold print. Morenike Adebayo, Law Faculty, University of Accra. She smiled, faint but full of pride. Back in Accra, Morenike laughed with her new friends at the dining hall. Her voice carried across the table, firm and joyful. Later that night, she lay in her bed, listening to the quiet hum of the fan above her. She opened her journal one last time that day and wrote one final line. She was never silenced again.